Hey there, I'm Mark, and welcome to my no production value review of the Lamy pen. This is the Lamy Swift, and I just picked it up. I normally don't do these reviews, but mainly because I don't really want to edit videos too long, but I figured there's some stuff worth sharing about it because I was very excited about this pen, and some small little details about it have kind of sunk my excitement to the point where I'm going to return it. I figure there's some other people in the same boat. So the first thing is that if you're even looking at this pen or looking at this video, there's probably a style of pen that you're into. In my case, it's this very thin, very straight lined, really kind of simple, clean, almost minimalist look to it, as opposed to some of the kind of the rounder, thicker handled pens. And the reason I mention the thickness and the style is because I think the reasons that I don't like this pen is because it kind of misses the mark on what a pen like this should be. There's definitely a lot to like about this pen. In a photo, it actually looks quite beautiful. The color is really nice, and the simple lines are really beautiful. There's this off-center retractable mechanism that kind of gives it a bit of a cool style. These round holes kind of also give it almost this motorcycle exhaust look and feel. So on paper, there's quite a bit, but there's these tiny subtle things that really are a problem. The first one is this retraction mechanism. This is the main interaction point with a pen, and this one feels absolutely terrible. It's not even engaging right now. Just listen to it for a second. It has this kind of, just high friction, unsatisfying. There's no positive feedback to it. And one of my favorite things to do is just kind of like play with the clicking mechanism, just kind of like when I'm thinking about something. I enjoy that. The Parker Jotter pens are just amazing for that. They have the best mechanism. This one does not. So right away, the first time I clicked it, I was like, ooh, this is gonna be bad. The second thing is the thickness of the pen. Doesn't look thick when you sort of see it in a picture. Definitely doesn't look thick when you're looking at it out of context. But as soon as you pick it up in your hand, it has much more kind of thickness than I would like, or I would expect in a pen that is kind of this kind of straight minimal pen. There's a lot, like some fountain pens and certain writing pens that are more rounded tend to be fatter, and some people like that grip. I'm not. Let me compare it with a few different things here. So I just happen to have these pens around. They're not chosen for any particular reason, but these are all three pens that I've just always thought were just like a nice thickness. And I never really even thought of the thickness. They're just kind of, they just felt good. It's only when you put it next to this guy that it doesn't feel good at all. So this is the Parker Vector pen, and you can see that this Lamy is a lot fatter. Here's a Uniball Micro Air, and while it's a little bit fatter than the Parker, it's still narrower than the Lamy, especially where you're holding it, which is right about there. And then finally, the other pen I have here is an Otto food ball. This is probably the thickest one, but yet it's still about, I don't know, 0.5 millimeter thinner than the Lamy, and it actually feels really nice in the hand. So the thickness is one issue that I have with this thing. The other problem is where you're actually holding the pen in your fingers. It is, well, let me just show you. The natural place to hold it would be on these little cutouts. But when you're writing, it feels, quite a bit too far from the paper here. So I can't write and talk at the same time. That is something I didn't know about myself. So by holding it where you're supposed to, it just feels a little bit too far away from the paper. Where I want to hold it, the perfect distance is right here, but as you can see that my fingers are right on this line, and it kind of acts as a bit of like a pivot point, making it feel like an unstable grip. And if you kind of look at it, this does, when you think about the proportions of the whole pen, that does seem a little bit bigger than most. Doesn't it just kind of look a little bit off? I didn't really notice that until I started to think about the length of the pen down here. So the place that feels most comfortable is right on this edge, and that makes for an unsatisfying grip. Obviously this is a little bit too close to the paper. My finger's already rubbing. I have to kind of like write more straight down here. So that's really uncomfortable. And if you think about, or rather look at, a pen, let's say this Parker one, my finger is, the grip point is right in the middle of this area here. Look where that grip point is lined up compared to the other ones. Everything, well, I guess this would be a personal preference thing, but look how much higher it is than all the other pens. So definitely think about where you like to write, where you like to hold the pen, and consider that this one is much, much higher than most other pens that I've ever used here. A quick note about the material of the pen. So the whole thing is metal, including the end, so it has a really nice kind of feel in the hand, but it has this sandblasted texture to it, which normally I don't have any problem with at all, except the sandblasting here feels a little bit too coarse, and even the way that it reflects the light just has a bit of a cheap kind of visual feel to it. There's a lot of, like, look at like a MacBook or an Apple keyboard or something, that aluminum finish. That feels and looks a lot more quality. This one just has something about it that doesn't really look good. It's almost, you know what it is? It's like when you look at it, your first thought is this is probably plastic, and you actually have to go check it to see if it's metal. So it's the look. It looks like plastic made to look like metal rather than actual metal. So whatever's trick is being played on my mind to make me think that, it's unfortunately something I can't stop thinking. And so when I look at it, the pen feels plastic, or rather looks plastic, even though it feels like metal. Now, I am fully unprepared for this video, so I'm leaning my phone in weird ways to be able to show you how it looks inside. I don't really care to talk about, the cartridges or anything like that, but just wanted to kind of show you what this part looks like. And at while I'm doing this, talk about this mechanism here, because I think a lot of these problems could have been avoided if Lamy didn't try to make this mechanism work the way it does. So the whole appeal to this pen is that when you push the mechanism in, it retracts this clip, and that's kind of like the gimmick of this pen. The idea being that, I assume, that when you put it, it's impossible to put the pen into your pocket when the pen tip is facing out. So you have to retract the pen so that then you can use the clip. Now, that is interesting, but they've made a whole lot of sacrifices. So the first one being the diameter of the actual grip. If you can see, you probably won't be able to see that well, but the pen has quite a bit of play inside of it. The cartridge does rather, so you can tell, that there's a lot of room in here for them to be able to make this thing like a half mil or a millimeter narrower. And the other thing is that the whole pen kind of tends to have like a bit of a loose feel because of this. And you can tell that the mechanism has quite a bit of moving parts inside there. And for whatever reason, to be honest, I'm actually surprised how unreliable and unpositive that actuation is. So there just doesn't feel like the kind of pen that you're going to keep for very long, because that mechanism doesn't really feel good. And the trade-offs of, I assume, some amount of length in the pen. It's longer than most of the pens that I have, because there's some amount of space up there, I imagine, that has to be accommodated for this this mechanism. And then the diameter, of course, which maybe I just mentioned. I don't know. So this mechanism, if you care about it, should be the reason you buy the pen, but it creates a whole bunch of trade-offs that I find to be a little bit too much. Now, I'm actually quite disappointed to be doing this review because I actually think this pen is quite beautiful. I really love the simple style. I love that it doesn't have any weird writing on it, like, you know, one of these that just has all kinds of stuff all over it, or this Oto is ridiculous. It's like I don't even know why they need to put all this stuff on it. It's just simple, it's clean. The logo, I think, is just beautiful. The whole thing is just super nice and minimalist, and it actually writes super well. Let me see if I can line this up for you. I mean, it's just really smooth. I mean, this is the cartridge, but it feels beautiful. I mean, the pen just actually feels really nice on paper. And so when I wrote with it, I thought, oh wow, that's really quite a beautiful pen. And I was trying to find ways to love the design of it and find ways to justify keeping it. But in the end, there's just too much about it for in this case, it was about $50 Canadian. It was just too much to justify a pen that you don't want to hold in your hands for very long. So anyway, that's the deal with this guy. If you were kind of somewhat searching for a pen the way I was, then hopefully this is useful. If you think if you think nothing I said here would be a turnoff for you, then definitely pick it up, because it does a lot of stuff right. It just has a few little things that might sway certain people one way or another. All right, that's it for this no production review.